Good morning, everyone. Welcome to House Judiciary on Valentine's Day. We have two bills today, Senate File 114 and Senate File 11. Pierre, why don't you call the roll?
Representative Brady,
Excused.
Representative Bratton,
Here.
Representative Chesney,
Here.
Representative Filer,
Here.
Representative Kelly,
Here.
Representative Ween,
Here.
Representative Singh,
Here.
Representative Webb,
Here.
Chairman Washington.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Very good. So we bring the good chairman from the Senate side back to the Judiciary Committee. Always great to see you, Senator. And I know you have a nice bill for us this morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's good to be back. Even though we've got new faces on the Judiciary Committee, it's good to be back where we spent a couple years together working on some things. And this bill, Mr. Chairman, to jump right into Senate File 114, comes about after a few years of quite a bit of work from constituent groups. And during this past interim, our sheriffs and chiefs of police went to work with our folks in the Attorney General's office. Ms. Chambers is right here with me, and she can add some information this morning. But this has been quite a long time coming, and I think it's a very important bill. There are probably 40 states out there that have these kind of protocols in place regarding what do you do when somebody calls in with a missing person. There's a huge body of law, as you might guess, when you're dealing with children. That is FBI related. There's a lot of things involved there, but we don't have it very consistently good on the front when somebody calls and an adult is missing. So that's what Senate File 14 attempts to address. It is the result, as I said, Mr. Chairman, of work primarily by our sheriffs and chiefs of police during this past interim. And we have Mr. Thompson in the audience, and I know that he'll want to come up and visit with you a little bit. In a few instances, Mr. Chairman, law enforcement agencies in our state may believe another law enforcement entity to be the primary reporting agency, and thus they would decline to accept a report of a missing person. This can lead to unnecessary delays and misunderstandings with families and friends of the missing person. Law enforcement agencies do not want to duplicate efforts or enter the same person multiple times in various governmental and non-governmental databases. This bill describes a process that prioritizes which agency is responsible for accepting the report and thus diminishing that duplication. Timely reporting and the use of the private sector can be crucial in getting the word out there if you have a missing person. Those private sector entities, however, often will not publish anything until they are able to publish which agency is handling that missing person report. The bill attempts to address that as well. Missing person groups often require that name. Since this bill identifies which agency is responsible, it will help add that credibility on all those websites that are used out across. This bill outlines a specific procedure for all Wyoming law enforcement agencies to follow. It contemplates the litany of issues surrounding these types of cases so that law enforcement can make the right decision immediately. Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to walk you into the bill real quickly if that's what you
Please.
would like for me to do. So, Mr. Chairman, if you go to page 2, one of the most important pieces of the bill is in paragraph A. Each law enforcement agency shall accept without delay any credible report of a missing person made to a law enforcement agency. The way this bill is drafted carves out the reasons why an agency can refuse that report. So the law enforcement agency knows of the location of the person. The law enforcement agency confirms the safe status of the person. We go through 7 different Romanettes that explain why an agency might not want to take that report. That's a lot easier than us trying to explain all the reasons why you should take the report. So I think that's why the bill was drafted this way. If you go over to section B on page 3, lines 13 through 22 are trying to address the issue when different jurisdiction, different sheriff's offices, for example, assume another county has reported or won't report because they feel it should be a different county and missing adults fall through the gaps. I like to think about it this way, Mr. Chairman. If we were up in Fremont County and we were hiking the hills up above Riverton, and you got lost and I came home, and I come down to Natrona County and I report that you're missing, they might very well assume that Fremont County is handling that. This attempts to clear that up. That happens a lot in Wyoming. Section C on page 4, lines 1 through 8, is trying to require the reporting to the National Crime Information Center in a timely manner so that we can broadcast statewide to put out things like a be on the lookout for a missing person faster and farther. That's paragraph C. And finally, over on page 5, I want to point to paragraph D. I think I've got it on page 4, but so section D is trying to mandate reporting to the National Clearinghouse via National Missing and Unidentified Person System. So, Mr. Chairman, I apologize for being a little disrupted here. I didn't bring the endorsed copy. So anyway, I appreciate, I hope that is a quick rundown of what the bill does. I'd be glad to dive a little bit deeper. Thank you very much, Pierre. Appreciate that. I think that covers everything, Mr. Chairman. I mentioned that you know, the FBI gets involved very quickly. Anyone under 21 years of age must be reported to the NCIC within 2 hours of receiving the report. The 8 hours would only apply to adults over 21. So there is that 8-hour reference in the statute or in this bill, and anyone over the age of 21. So that's the reason for that delineation. I hope I covered the bill a little bit, what it's attempting to do, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Representative Filer?
Mr. Chairman, I promise not to take too long on this at all. Senator, yeah, I know. Senator Landon, I think this is just an easy question, but on page 2, part A, it says each law enforcement agency shall accept without delay any credible reporting persons made unless at least one of these occurs. And I want to go down to the third little I's there. It said the person reporting missing is not a resident of Wyoming. Would that mean if somebody was here hunting or could have been out hiking somewhere, but they're not a Wyoming resident, now we're not gonna, you know, the party or somebody, wife in Arkansas reports them missing, does this do anything at all?
So, Mr. Chairman, Representative, that's a great question, and we really wrestled with that on the Senate side. In fact, there was a standing committee amendment which was drafted to address this language. And we discovered after talking in the bullpen with our legal counsel that we really didn't do what we thought we did with that. So we stripped the standing committee amendment back out of there. What this language is attempting to do is to say that let's just say the chairman and I went to Colorado and we joined a relative of his and we were hiking the mountains in Colorado, and that individual got lost, and we came home to Natrona County and attempted to report that. We want to make sure that our agencies accept that report. That would be somebody who is not a resident of Wyoming, but we're still going to report a missing person. And if our agency gets on it right away, they can make those communications to the proper people down in that other state. But we didn't, in this bill, we didn't want to miss a situation like that. I hope that makes sense. And the language, we tried to make it better, and you know, maybe this committee can do that, but that's what it's attempting to do.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it seems like the rest of that sentence says, and the most recent verifiable location of the person was not in Wyoming.
Sure.
And so, even though they're not a resident of Wyoming, if the last seen location was in Fremont County, they would be reported in Wyoming. But if it only applies when the most recent sighting was out of state.
Very good point, Mr. Chairman, and I think Ms. Chambers would certainly be willing to help on this too.
Okay, Representative Chestick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I love the bill. I think it's a great addition. I just have a question about a couple of words on page 2, line 18. This is on the engrossed version. It's the Romanet 4. I like the symmetry of it, past, present, and future, but confirming the future is kind of a fool's errand. How do you, so the will accept, the law enforcement agency confirms that another law enforcement agency already has, is this, or will accept a missing person report. How do you confirm that another agency might in the future do something? And the concern that I have is we get one of these situations. Oh, I thought you were gonna do it. No, I thought you were gonna do it, and nobody does it. So what is the thinking on the will accept language?
Do you want to try to grab that one?
Ms.
Chairman
Chambers,
Wa-
welcome.
Chairman Wassett, thank you. Kara Chambers, Wyoming Attorney General's Office. Chairman Wassett, Representative Chestick. Remember, so these are reasons why they couldn't take in a report, and I agree. I think it's just giving some deference to the law enforcement to give them a beat to communicate and have a moment, but is accepting or will accept a missing person report. I mean, I think that's a reason why they say that they wouldn't, but I understand your concern. So if that is language that you find problematic, I'd leave it up to you. But I do think we just want a law enforcement agent to be able to say, look, we're not taking this report because it's already being handled. And sometimes that takes a minute, and I think that's why you have that sort of cushy language. But so we are trying to keep it, we want to capture everything we possibly can.
So when the chairman and I come back from Colorado and report my cousin from Colorado missing in the mountains,
Yes.
and the high sheriff in Ventura County calls his counterpart in the state to the south, and they say, yeah, well, we've got that report. Your cousin's sister's brother is reporting it right now. And so that's how you would confirm that something's happening in the future.
That's exactly right, Mr. Chairman. And you know, we did not discuss that language, Representative, much on the other side. There may be a way to improve that language, but I think we're getting to what we were trying to accomplish there. Just trying to cover every base to make sure that agencies take these reports seriously, get them out there, get on them.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I know you have another committee assignment, so I'm going to ask the committee if you have any further questions for the senator. Yes, Representative Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have just one quick, and it's also with Romanet 4, and I'm wondering after the will accept, if there would be, the terms without delay would be appropriate in there, or why they were maybe not put in there.
I think we have without delay up above and on line 2, which probably carries over to that Romanet below, but.
Mr. Chairman, I do think so, but that's certainly something the committee could discuss a little bit later. And Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just a couple of final thoughts. It really is a privilege to bring this bill forward. There are a lot of folks who worked on this all the way back to 22 when we had the Missing and Indigenous Person Task Force. And I really tipped my Stetson to the sheriffs and chiefs because they went to work on this. We had one of our sheriffs up in Bighorn Basin country who took the point guard position on this and did a lot of great work. Mr. Thompson, of course, and then Ms. Chambers. So I really want to salute them. I think it's a good bill, and one that you could probably make even better, so.
I think we have that sheriff on Zoom this morning, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
All right, very good. Any last questions for the senator? We'll let him dash off to corporations. Thank you, Senator, for bringing this bill.
Really appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Chambers, any additional comments?
Thank you. I did want to just clarify on page 2, line 12, the Romanet 3. So what that paragraph is saying is we've run into situations where we have a Wyoming resident who has gone missing in another state. And Wyoming law enforcement didn't feel that they should take a report. This is allowing that. This is saying so remember, because these are reasons not to, it's almost like a triple negative. So we're saying if the person is a Wyoming resident, even if they went missing in another state, Wyoming can take the report. That's what that says, just in a really awkward way. Because we're trying to limit, because I saw some eyes were saying like we have 8 reasons why you can't take a report. That's because we have 1,000 reasons why you should, if that makes sense. But I'd be happy to answer any questions. I do, again, I will stay in the room if any questions come up. But I know there are several people who are online. And in fact, one of them has given me a speech to read on her behalf, but I believe she's online. So she's not online. If I could very briefly read some statements from Desiree Tinoco. She was really the passion behind this, if that's all right.
Please do.
Thank you. My name is Desiree Tinoco. I am the director and founder of the nonprofit Missing People of Wyoming, which began as a Facebook group 6 years ago. After hearing of a missing man in my community in Casper and realizing that at the time the state did not have a public missing persons database, I started the Missing People of Wyoming Facebook group, which now has nearly 35,000 members. 4 years ago, I worked with DCI to get a public-facing database, which has been a wonderful resource, but there's still more work to do, including making sure all law enforcement is on the same page when it comes to reporting and investigating missing people. This bill is another important step in that direction. During this process, there has been a push not only from the general public, but also loved ones of those who are missing for more resources and consistency regarding a missing persons protocol. I've since shared my concerns with DCI, WASCOP, and others. In Wyoming, we have no protocols for missing people. This leads to many inconsistencies among various departments in how these cases are reported, which I can attest to from personal experience that has led to many issues in getting them entered into the NCIC database. For example, I have personally seen several cases denied due to that individual's lifestyle, income, criminal history, questionable background, or not having a physical address, and I personally had to go out of my way to push law enforcement to get them reported missing. Last time I checked, Gabby Petito didn't have a physical address either, but no one had an issue reporting her missing. To their credit, despite their own tragedy, the Petito family has formed a foundation to try to raise awareness for others less fortunate people who don't get the same attention. And unfortunately, most of the people who go missing are not young, blonde, beautiful women, and are often more likely to be minorities, men, the elderly, or people with substance abuse and mental health issues, or the so-called undesirables who need the most help. Likewise, Wyoming has a problem when it comes to missing people. Our state is ranked 12th in the nation for the most missing people, and I would argue that that number is higher because our numbers are inaccurate. That's the bad news. The good news is that there are fixes that won't cost the state a dime to implement. This is why this bill is so important, because it would incorporate standards for reporting missing people that most states already have. This bill would, for one, provide guidance and accountability for agencies throughout the state, would create consistency regarding how missing person cases are handled, not only with our own jurisdiction, but incorporating the surrounding states that have similar laws. This can be a huge benefit when it comes to cases that cross over state or county lines. Assuring that we have the correct number of reports overall for the state. It will make it easier to determine which agencies should and will report the individual missing. And lastly, take the burden off of nonprofits such as my own in order to track missing people. At some point, my nonprofit will cease to exist, and I have seen nonprofits fizzle over the years, regardless of the dedication. You'll typically have just a few running a whole nonprofit to have such a such consistency and reliability coming from a nonprofit entity is questionable at best. If a loved one of those that are missing is lucky enough to find the resources our nonprofit provides, we do everything within our power in order to persuade agencies to report their loved one missing. However, not all cases are that lucky. This is also not the work I set out to do when starting the nonprofit. My fear is over time, these cases will soon fall to the wayside and will not be reported or given the assistance they so desperately need. And again, that was from Desiree Tinoco, who does work with my office and the governor's office, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Persons Task Force. So with that, I can't answer any questions on her behalf, but I can certainly answer questions about the law, the status of missing people, and the work that my office has done.
Ms. Tinoco is certainly the champion of this cause and been at the forefront for a number of years, and hats off to her for a job well done. Any questions for Ms. Chambers? Okay. Bring Sheriff Blackburn in, please. Good morning, Sheriff. Let me start by saying you and your agency are in our thoughts. Been a really, really rough week up in your country, and there's no easy way to deal with such tragedy. And we just want you to know that we're well aware of what's taken place up there, and our thoughts and prayers are with you.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know why you got me all choked up all of a sudden. It sure enough has been a tough week, Mr. Chairman, and honored members of the committee. It's an honor to come in front of you again. I do sincerely apologize not being there in person. I had honestly planned on being down there, but as you well know, circumstances have required that I stay pretty close to home this week. I will be very brief, and then I will entertain any questions you have from a law enforcement perspective to address the excellent question that was brought, two excellent questions that were brought. One, reporting from another state. I'll give you one quick example. A young man from the Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, came and we believe that he was coming out here to visit someone. We do not know that for sure. That came from an exhaustive investigation later and drilling down into some of his social media accounts that it potentially was out here. The first knowledge we had of anything being in this area was the subject's vehicle, which was abandoned on a isolated country road. It had been cleaned significantly. There was a couple of electronic devices in it, and that was all that we had. We did not have him listed as a missing person at that time, and our investigation of the vehicle, investigating a little deeper rather than just an abandoned vehicle. Anytime in northern Wyoming on a Bentonite Haul Road, you have a vehicle from Washington, D.C., a rookie officer should be asking some questions, but you don't always leave that to everybody functioning the same. And this bill would allow us to call back to another agency. It would also answer the question of why it would be accepted in their last seen location in another state. And that way would also address the question that was brought forward of dealing with the future. In contacting Washington, D.C., they were not aware that they potentially had a missing person yet either. They did make some contact to the family, and we were able to get ahead of the situation in this rare case and find out that they had not heard from their loved one in a period of time. And Washington, D.C., as the last verifiable location, was able to quickly enter that subject, and we were able to bring the FBI in. And we do not have a resolution on that case yet, but these are the types of cases, and this demonstrates the emergent nature of getting this into databases and getting it throughout the United States. We have a saying in law enforcement, you can't outrun Motorola. And the short version on that is the quicker it gets in our databases and the quicker it starts moving among the law enforcement communities wherever they are, the faster we may be able to get a shred of evidence before it goes underground or before it's destroyed. And an example of that is a car of a missing person that was located in another state, and there was no missing person, nothing on the registry, and they simply impounded it. And that's not a negative comment on the other state. That's what they normally would do on a highway with no other indication, where there's a lot of transient population moving through there. But there's no resolution on that case, and that car languished in an impound lot for a long period of time. And so this helps us to move quickly and to start to find any shred of information. It also allows us to get this into the public and work in partnership, and rather than burning bridges down, build bridges for our community activists who are concerned about helping their fellow man, which we as a law enforcement community applaud. I will cease and entertain any questions that the good committee might have.
Thank you for all your work on this bill. Committee, any questions for the sheriff? Seeing none, thank you for joining us by Zoom, and we certainly appreciate why you couldn't be with us today, but maybe in the future you can join us.
I look forward to it. It's an honor to see the work you do for us, and we as a law enforcement community are grateful that you have our backs and that you are recognizing the work that's being done. It's a difficult job, and it's been about a little over 72 hours, so we're all starting to come down and come off automatic pilot. But there are a lot of things about this job that are witnessed that are very difficult to understand, except by a very few, and we appreciate your support of us.
Very good. Thank you, Sheriff. Mr. Thompson, do you wish to testify on this bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Alan Thompson, the Executive Director of WASCOP, which is the Chiefs and Sheriffs Association. And other than echoing the statements that have been provided by the testimony beforehand, I think the examples that the good sheriff gave paint a clearer picture than I could ever do. I just wanted to add that this is a collaborative effort from WASCOP and many other entities involved with this, taking language from neighboring states, working with it to make it specific to Wyoming. And, while you might look at that exception list as being lengthy or long, I think it actually does more to narrow those exceptions and require more acceptance of it. And that's what we're trying to do. I think we came into this with a perception from a law enforcement angle that this isn't a problem, we're doing the right thing. And then when we have conversations with those in the public that are trying to, that work in this world every day, I mean, this is only a portion of what law enforcement does in this state, dealing with missing persons, then I think we all would agree that if we're not doing the right thing, we need to codify it, get it into law, make sure that all law enforcement understands what the expectation is in Wyoming. And we would hope that this would move favorably through the committee today. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, sir.
Representative Chestic.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Going back to my concern about the will accept, to avoid the potential for misunderstanding between agencies about who's going to accept this, I want to pick up on my colleague, Mr. Representative Webb. Would the insertion of without delay after will accept, would that help the bill, do you think?
Which line are you talking about?
On line 18, will accept without delay a missing person report. Would that help clarify the potential for misunderstanding?
Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I mean, I think it's already in A above, but adding an emphasis on that to make sure that it doesn't languish indefinitely, I don't think that inhibits the intent of the bill at all.
Further questions, Mr. Thompson? Representative Bratton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question about how the media, there was something brought up about how the media interacts with the law enforcement agency and that they don't want to report until they know there is a reporting, who's in charge. Could you speak to that?
Mr. Thompson?
Mr. Chairman, that's a very good question. What we're trying to deal with here is most, I wouldn't say legitimate, but missing person specific social media or even mainstream media focusing on missing persons will get calls from family members or friends and say, hey, this is going on. Look at, all this information we have, this person's missing. Will you report on it and get it out to everyone? And they will not do that until there's a law enforcement entity that can confirm that this is actually the case. There's various reasons for people to do that without involving law enforcement. And a lot of times that can be trying to find someone for nefarious reasons, using social media to stalk, harass, or locate someone that's trying to be hidden, not missing. So those entities rely on a law enforcement entity, and I wouldn't say approval, but acknowledgement that they've accepted a missing person and they're doing all the things that are outlined in here, and that legitimizes that. Then they put it out on social media, cover it in the mainstream media and so forth. So the hang up in them trying to get that information out fast sometimes comes from law enforcement delaying or trying to decide who is taking this report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The governor's office want to weigh in this morning? Sorry to keep you waiting back there. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Washit, members of the committee. It's fine. I think law enforcement definitely should be the first ones to testify on this bill. My name's Kit Wentland, Special Counsel, Tribal Relations Policy Advisor for Governor Gordon, and I'll let our liaison introduce himself.
Good morning, Chairman Washit and committee. My name is James Sarles. I am the tribal liaison to the Eastern Shoshone Tribe at Governor Mark Gordon's office.
And Mr. Chairman, we would have our Northern Arapaho liaison, but she had a conflicting meeting with Leadership Wyoming, so she would be here, but we had to kind of divvy it up. And we'll be quick if you're ready for us.
Please.
Long story short, public safety, especially when it comes to curbing the epidemic of missing person cases in Wyoming, is a core priority for the governor. His Missing and Murdered Indigenous Persons Task Force, which Director Chambers so aptly handles and helps us manage day to day, as well as the legislation and statewide reports it has produced, have been critical in shining light, especially on the underreported tragedy of missing tribal members in the state. And truly an epidemic would be the right word for that. That task force has been in place for several years. There's been several pieces of legislation that I know this committee and you have helped us work on. He supports this bill and bills such as this one that enhance law enforcement response, as well as ensure the more efficient processing of these cases so that you can find them and stop them early and soon before they happen. As time goes on, it gets harder and harder and the fix is less and less certain. And with that, I would turn it over to James if he has any comments as well.
Mr. Goggle?
Good morning, Chairman. Again, James Sarles. Like Kit said, the governor does support this bill. I cannot speak for the Shoshone tribe, however, they are aware of it. And I'm sure they might even be online watching. So I have talked to them a little bit about it. They understand it. They seem to be encouraged about it. So with that, I encourage your aye vote, and I stand for any questions.
Mr. Goggles, with all the work on the missing and indigenous people, can you kind of we've got a lot of new committee members. Maybe if you can, tell us how things have improved since that work first began?
Yes, Chairman Washit, committee. I believe the Missing and Murdered Indigenous People, the task force has done a lot of work with the tribes. A lot of their, they have marches, they have gatherings, they bring awareness to the community. So it does help a lot. Just people being aware that there is somebody that they can contact, there is somebody that cares, there is somebody that is watching out.
The committee, for one of the big advances I thought was we're all familiar with Amber Alert, right? That's managed by our highway patrol. And we discovered in the process of that important work with the missing, murdered indigenous that when people were going missing, possibly abducted from the reservation, they were not being promptly posted on our Amber Alerts. And so that was one of the big improvements, I thought, in all that work was building that partnership with the Highway Patrol and the tribes so that we can promptly get folks alerted. Really good stuff, so. Thank you both for being here. Any concluding comments? Just thumbs up?
Mr. Chairman, please pass the bill.
All right, thank you very much. And do we have Lena Decker, is that for this bill? Bring her in.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Hopefully you can hear me. Make sure everything seems to be
You can, please continue. Welcome.
perfect. Okay, my name is Lena Deckert, and I'm an assistant research scientist at the Wyoming Survey and Analysis Center at the University of Wyoming. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today and to provide some information relevant to your discussions on the issue of adult missing persons protocols. I am going to try to share my screen really quick. Just try one time here. Okay, hopefully you're looking at a map. So recently our team compiled information to examine missing adult protocols across the United States. This research was commissioned by the Wyoming Division of Victim Services to better understand how states address these cases and to identify any potential gaps in Wyoming's current practices. Our study began with a review of federal and state laws, as well as policies and procedures for handling missing adult cases. We analyzed how states manage reporting, database utilization, and the public alert systems. This included evaluating which states require law enforcement agencies to enter missing adult cases into federal systems, such as the National Crime Information Center. And as you can hopefully see here, we have 40 states and the District of Columbia that do have mandates requiring law enforcement agencies to enter missing adult cases into either a state or a federal database, ensuring that critical information is shared across jurisdictions. By contrast, Wyoming currently has no legislative requirement for law enforcement agencies to report adult missing persons to any state or federal database. In Wyoming, the discretion for managing adult missing persons cases rests solely with the individual law enforcement agencies. And while Wyoming does operate a missing persons clearinghouse, it relies on voluntary submissions from agencies, which can lead to inconsistencies in reporting. This contrasts with states that have established mandatory protocols for database entry and alert activation, which often seems to improve their coordination and outcome in these cases. It's important to note that our report did not make a recommendation, but instead just aimed to provide a really clear understanding of the current landscape, both nationally and within Wyoming. And we hope that this information will serve as a valuable resource to you as you consider this issue and its implications for Wyoming. That is all that I have for you today, and I thank you for your time and the opportunity to share the findings of our research.
Thank you, Ms. Deckert. That big white square kind of stands out, doesn't it? Committee, any questions for Ms. Deckert? Thank you for joining us and for putting that research together. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the room on Senate File 114? Anybody else on Zoom? Okay, I'm going to close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure? Moved by Lean, second by Filer. Any amendments? Representative Webb.
I would like to add an amendment that we insert the words "without delay" after "will accept." And the reason, well, we'll talk about it in discussion if there's a second, yeah.
That's page 2, line 18.
Page 2,
That's
line
page
18.
2, line 18, after the word accept, without delay, a missing person report. Is that right?
Correct.
Pierre, do you have that? Committee, were you clear? Comments on it? Representative Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I literally had written those two words in that same place myself already. I'd just like to illustrate why this apparent redundancy is actually useful. We can illustrate this very small chink, and we may be putting duct tape where we don't have a leak, but it definitely won't hurt the bill. Because if we were to read it like this, each agency shall accept without delay unless another agency will eventually accept. Now we can illustrate why we need the without delay in two places.
Good explanation. Representative Shestak?
Yeah, I concur with Representative Kelly, that there's two agencies here. One shall accept it without delay unless the other one agrees to, so without delay. I think that it is not redundant. It is actually necessary to make sure that more reports are accepted. Adding without delay there means more things will be accepted into the data, which is the goal of the bill. So very much in support of the amendment.
Okay. Everybody clear? Representative Webb, any final comment?
Yeah, and my reasoning for it is that, so if the other agency, we know we're talking about pointing fingers, they can't delay. They, if they're a larger agency and it takes too much time, I'm just trying to get this to where they too cannot delay.
All right, all those in favor of Representative Webb's amendment on page 2, line 18, adding the words without delay, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. That amendment carries. Further amendments? Seeing no more further amendments, have a call for the question. You want to call the roll?
Representative Brady,
Representative Brady left a vote of aye.
Representative Bratton,
Aye.
Representative Chestek,
Aye.
Representative Filer,
Aye.
Representative Kelly,
Aye.
Representative Lean,
Aye.
Representative Singh,
Aye.
Representative Webb,
Aye.
Chairman Washet.
Aye.
9 ayes, do pass amended.
And I'll carry the bill on the floor and have everybody else back me up, okay? All right. All right, that takes us now to Senate File 11. Senate File 11. So Senate File 11 committee is a interim bill from your Joint Judiciary of the 67th. This was a discussion that came about in the context of the squatters statute that we looked at yesterday, or at our last meeting. And this one dealt with a unique circumstance where you have individuals presenting documentation of some sort saying, I'm a renter, I belong here. And the testimony we heard was that some of these were patently false documents. People saying things like, well, I paid rent. How much was the rent? $500 for 6 months for this 3-bedroom house, right? And so the language in here was know or should have known, right? That this was not a proper rental agreement and so forth. And in some of the other states, some of these squatters are quite sophisticated. They have educated one another. They have helped, mass produce and share on social media different types of documents that will cause law enforcement to delay in certain states. And so that was the genesis of this bill draft, was to try and do something about those instances where somebody presents a piece of paper to the sheriff's deputy at 3 o'clock in the morning and saying, you can't throw me out, I belong here. And so this ties in to the language in the bill that we dealt with the other day that talked about it only applies to squatters and does not apply to tenants, right? And so this was seen as being necessary to differentiate between someone who fraudulently tries to pretend to be a tenant and thus escape the impact of the squatters bill that we dealt with the other day. So with that, it's a fairly clean, short, 2-page bill. It simply defines what a document is something in writing, whether physical, electronic, or another form. Property means real property improved by a dwelling or structure. and a person is guilty of a felony punishable by imprisonment of 10 years. And this goes along with some of our other false documents, false swearing statutes, same kind of penalty applies in those cases. That a person intentionally uses a document that the person knows or reasonably should know is false or fraudulent to gain or remain in possession of property or to claim a right to property for which the person does not have a legal right to possess. So that's the bill. Any questions? Representative Webb? Well, I think we might have some testimony here. Get ahead of ourselves, Representative Webb.
My question is, does this extend to situations where somebody may put a lien on a title of a home or something like that? Or would this not go far enough?
Short answer is I'm not 100% sure. I don't believe so. The cases that we heard about were, people actually handing a supposed lease or rental agreement or something to the law enforcement officer that was called to the scene of the squatting. Representative Chestick might jump in here.
Yeah, as I read this bill, I don't think the fraudulent lien that you're concerned about, I don't think, a lien does not give you a claim of right or possession. Although a claim to a right to property, a lien is a property interest. I'm thinking out loud here, excuse me. So the lien doesn't give you a right to possession, but whether it gives you a right to property, a property interest, never mind. Let me think about this some more.
Okay. Ms. Erberkite? I suspect you support this bill.
Mr. Chairman, Lori Erberkite with the Wyoming Realtors, and indeed we do. And obviously, it's a riveting discussion we could have this morning. Yes, we are very supportive, and I think you made the best point about this, is that a lot of times people think squatters, they're drug addicts or homeless people that are just looking for shelter, and the reality is they are becoming much more sophisticated and have figured out that if they have a false document, they can stave off the eviction for a little bit longer. So yes, we're very supportive. Thank you.
Questions, Ms. Erberkite? Representative Filer?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The one thing I'm just trying to figure out, so if I'm if I'm a sheriff, show up to a property and somebody has this document, I guess we're gonna have to use officer discretion. I just don't want to put an officer in the wrong place going, is this a real document or not, right? And then the officer has to be discretionary on whether that is a true document or not. There's gonna have to be an investigation, so, I mean, I like the bill, don't get me wrong, but I just don't want to, I want to make sure we have some type of a sideboard where I have assurance that we're not going to put an officer in a position where if they make the wrong decision on discretionary, that they're going to get in trouble.
Mr. Thompson, you want to?
Mr. Chairman, I would just say that issue is going to be more in line with Senate File 6. That is the actual getting the people out of the property. This is after that fact, and maybe they do have to wind up going to court to get them out. And then this is after the fact that, and by the way, you also committed a felony by using this fraudulent document.
Mr. Thompson? I see a head bob, so I.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Alan Thompson with Wascop Chiefs and Sheriffs. We were part of this discussion this summer and glad to be part of it. To answer the previous question that we just had, I don't think this deals with the 2 o'clock in the morning issue, but it starts that investigation. And if you look at the wording around 8 and 9 on page 2, it says that when someone intentionally uses a document that the person knows or reasonably should know. We have those cases where a third party on Craigslist or other social media takes a Zillow photo and rents a house remotely that's not theirs and not for rent, sends that person a lease agreement, and cops do show up at that house in response to a trespasser, and there's a guy in there with his family and a lease agreement that says, I really thought I should be here. So that person is another victim of this crime. He's been paying rent to someone else that's not an owner of the property. Now, that doesn't mean he has rights to that property, but it also doesn't mean he committed a felony, because that investigation is gonna be a drawn-out investigation to figure out, who this third-party person is, if they really exist, all those sorts of things. So I think that this covers another facet of fraud that we see with rental properties, and is another roadmap for law enforcement. And then there was a previous question about, does this apply to like liens or title theft and things like that? I mean, I think there's some components of that crime that might apply to this. And I would say that this just gives your prosecutor another option to successfully prosecute a crime where somebody was victimized and their property was attempted to be used or stolen from them. And so a prosecutor can look at the fraud, the forgery maybe, this statute, and just determine which one best fits the scheme that was used in that case. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions if you have them, sir.
Thank you, and I appreciate the clarification that, like most white-collar cases, that there's going to be a protracted investigation. This isn't something where somebody shows you a piece of paper and you immediately throw them in jail, and I appreciate that. All right, any further questions for chiefs or sheriffs? Ms. Urberkite? We have a mic open someplace. I'm hearing an echo coming back at it. Just, I didn't know mine would echo all by itself. Anyone else in the room wishing to testify on Senate File 11? Ms. Chambers shaking their head. Anybody on Zoom for Senate File 11? Okay, we'll close public comment. Committee, what's your preference? Moved by Filer, second by Singh. Representative Chestic.
Having had more time to think about the question posed by Representative Webb, I think this is broad enough to cover the fraudulent lien, which is, I think, what we want it to do, and I think it does cover it. So I'm not proposing the amendment, but let me just explain my thinking here. So the first part up to line 10 is the false lease. That's easy. Or to claim a right to property, a lien is a right to property, which the person does not have a legal right or claim a right. So if I am filing a fraudulent lien, it's a property right, and I know it's fraudulent, I'm claiming a right. So I do think the language is broad enough to cover the fraudulent lien, and therefore, which it should cover fraudulent liens. I think it does. So I'm very much in support of the bill.
Any proposed amendments? Seeing none? Anybody want a question being called? I want to call the roll, please. Representative Brady, left a vote of aye.
Representative Breton,
Aye.
Representative Chestic,
Aye.
Representative Filer,
Aye.
Representative Kelly,
Aye.
Representative Lean,
Aye.
Representative Singh,
Aye.
Representative Webb,
Aye.
Chairman Washit.
Aye.
9 ayes do pass.
You have a volunteer to carry the bill on the floor? Representative Shestak, thank you very much. We'll back you up on that one. And we stand adjourned on this Valentine's Day, 3-day weekend. We'll see you back on Wednesday of next week, so we stand adjourned.